Is there a shortcut to awakening? Such a good question. Somebody asked this in comments, and I thought I would address this. So I think first we're going to talk about time, and we're going to investigate the nature of time. We're going to investigate the illusory nature of time. First, we're going to talk about it from a bit of a scientific standpoint, because sometimes that helps us to have a mental model. And then we're going to talk about it through direct experience, which means I'm going to invite you to actually go along with the exercises and see where it leads you experientially, to see if you can get a taste of what timelessness really is, or the word eternity. Although maybe that's a loaded word, or it sounds like a fluffy spiritual word, it actually means the experience of being outside of time, the experience of not being subject to time. And it's a rather profound experience. I would call it sublime, actually. And the goal will be, with this sort of pointing and an invitation for you to work along with me and to look into your experience, the goal would be to have some taste of that eternal nature, that experience of the eternal nature of reality. So first of all, let's talk about it from a bit of a scientific standpoint, just for fun. I've thought about this a few times when looking up into the night sky, and if you're happen to be listening to this at night and you are looking up into the night sky, then you can just do this as you listen. But when we look into the night sky, we see vast arrays of stars, millions and millions of stars. And some of those stars, whether it's obvious to the naked eye or not, which it almost never is, some of those stars are actually not stars, they're galaxies. So that means that even though they look about the same size as a star, they're actually hundreds of billions of stars, or even a trillion stars or more, all in one collection. And that point of light, that apparent point of light, is vastly farther away than all the other stars we're perceiving. It's like orders of magnitude in distance beyond all of the stars we're perceiving. Now, of a historical interest, when you look up into the sky and you see those little smudges that look like stars, but if you look with a telescope, you can see that they're actually smudges. They're not a point of light like a star would be. We didn't actually know those were galaxies until about 100 years ago. I think it was exactly 100 years ago, 1924, because it was Edwin Hubble who stated that these are not stars, or what they used to call nebulas, because the astronomers from the 17th century could see them, and they knew they looked different. They looked like smudges, and they named them nebulas. But they had no idea that these were far more distant galaxies than any star we can see that had billions of stars in them. But Edwin Hubble said, these aren't stars, and they're not this thing called a nebula. These are billions of stars. These are galaxies, and they're very, very far away. So that was only 100 years ago that we realized that. But now that you know that, the next time you look into the sky, and maybe you'll see Andromeda, which is about 2 million light years away. So Andromeda has, I think, over 1 trillion stars. It's a giant galaxy. So you're actually seeing photons coming from another galaxy. They're hitting your retina. Not only that, they've been traveling for 2 million years at the speed of light to reach your retina, and they came directly from that galaxy, from the stars in that galaxy. So 2 million years to travel through space to hit your retina at the speed of light. This is 1.5 million years before the first Homo sapiens even began to evolve. That's how long those photons have been traveling, and that's what you're seeing. But you're in direct contact through the photon, right? Now, if this doesn't put your mind on tilt, I don't know what does. But the next part's even better. The next part is, from the standpoint of Einstein's special theory of relativity, those photons actually don't experience time or space. This is literally true and scientifically proven and mathematically provable, that those photons, the photon that's touching your retina, causing a reaction, chemical reaction, electrical reaction to your retina, it is not experiencing any distance between you and the galaxy that we're thinking is 200 million years away. 2 million light years away. So 2 million years in your time it took that photon to come and strike your retina, but the photon itself is in contact with the galaxy and you at the same time. Truly. In fact, that may be the more primary way that the experience occurs, because the speed of light is a constant, right? So we just may be somehow slowed down through various interactions with the Higgs field and quantum chromodynamics. We're slowed, quote unquote, slowed down into this experience of time and space and mass. But the primary reality may actually just be light. And so from the standpoint of light, which you are directly experiencing, you're in contact with that Andromeda galaxy. Not only that, you're in contact with the beginning and the end of the universe, because a photon does not experience, or a massless particle does not experience time or space. So that's length contraction and time dilation. Time dilates to infinity and length contracts to zero. So think about that for a moment, that when you are experiencing the light from that galaxy, there's no distance at all. There's zero distance from a very real perspective. Yours is one perspective, and that's the perspective of thought. And there's a sort of matter-based perspective, if you want to think about it that way. But there's an energetic perspective, because that light is energy, and mass is essentially energy, right? Matter is energy. So energetically, you are literally in contact with the Andromeda galaxy when you're looking at it. Those photons don't experience space. They don't experience you as distant from the galaxy. So what does experience you as distant from the galaxy? Nothing but a thought, right? It's energy. And so that's one sort of scientific way of looking at it, the fact that you're like in direct contact, both temporally and spatially, with what we call distant objects. So that's just a sort of model if you have a scientific mind. But the more important aspect to this video, the more important approach here is really to directly try to investigate the nature of how you experience time, how you experience yourself or something moving through time, and whether that's actually happening. So it helps to start by just reminding yourself that as we work through this, we're not concerned with anything that's happened in the past. We're not concerned with memories, right? Because right now you could think about something that happened 5 minutes ago. Right now you could think of something that happened 1 day ago or 1 year ago. Whether you think about any of those things 5 minutes, a day ago, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, right? Does it actually change this experience at all? No, the only thing that's different is the thought form. The only thing different is the way the mind is moving in that moment. It makes it look a little different. And I understand another thought comes and says, no, but this is real. That really happened. Okay. What if you imagine an elf, climbing down your chimney and bringing you cookies or something? You can imagine that. Did that really happen? Yeah. Doesn't appear here, just like a memory doesn't appear here. So I just want to make that distinction that when we're talking about presence, we're not talking about thoughts. We're not talking about the content of thoughts. A thought can appear in the present, but a thought doesn't define anything outside of the present, because there is nothing outside of the present. Yeah. So it's key to sort of start with that context and approach this in contemplation from that context, or else you'll just get tied up in your mind. Yeah. So for instance, if you find yourself like arguing with me in your mind, oh no, it's not like that. It's like this. I know about time. I know about memory. I know whatever. Just see that those are also thoughts. You're actually remembering something else. You're sort of referring to a memory of something you learned, let's say. That's what the thought's saying. No, I learned about this. I know about this. Again, that doesn't change the experience of this present moment, other than the flavor of the thought has fluctuated a little bit from something that feels like information to knowledge to an image to the recent past to the distant past. But all that is just fluctuation in consciousness or in thought, right? So just start by recognizing that, or taking that context on board and realizing every question I'm going to ask you, or every way I suggest you sort of contemplate or look, we're coming from that context. We're only looking here because this is the only thing that there is to look at. We're not looking outside of this moment because there is no outside of this moment. So that leads to the second point I want to make, and that is, as I ask the questions, it might stop your mind. It might really slow the mind down. It might put the mind on tilt. It might confuse the mind. It may feel disorienting. It may feel fearful. All those things can happen and they're fine. If you feel any of those things, just give it a moment. Just let it settle, and usually you'll just move beyond. If a fearful experience comes, that's just what's happening. It's here in presence, and you're in direct contact with it. It's fine, but it will pass because everything passes. Yeah. So if the mind gets quiet, there's nothing you have to do with that. Just keep tuning into what I'm saying. Keep looking at where I'm pointing to the degree you can without contemplating, without conceptualizing and internally processing through self-talk. Just look at where I'm pointing and see if you can't discern what I'm actually pointing to. So that's what I recommend, right? So here we are. No past outside of a thought. No future outside of a thought. Really, there's nothing here we have to do. We're not compelled to do anything specific. So we can kind of relax and just become curious about the nature of this, whatever this is, this moment. And become curious about the nature of time, because that's what we're here to investigate. So first of all, just experiencing this moment. What is your experience of time? Just ask yourself, what is my experience of time? Now, you can do that as many times as you want. You can pause the video and come back too. But if you've done that, if you've asked yourself, what is my experience of time? And the mind just goes quiet, or it just becomes very still, that's perfect. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to add to that. On the other hand, if the thoughts came, right, if the mind revved up and started, I don't know how to do this, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Well, my experience of time is, I remember what happened today. I remember this morning. That's just thoughts coming, right? That's just a bunch of thoughts. And if that happens, then ask yourself, when am I experiencing those thoughts? Right now? Right now? Right now? And even as you notice that and you ask the question, when am I experiencing those thoughts? Your mind may go quiet right now. And then the answer is, I don't know. Maybe there were thoughts, but I don't know. Right now, there's nothing. Yeah. That's okay too. Again, it could go very quiet very quickly. What is your experience of time right now, in this moment? Do you experience like a clock of some kind, if you're not looking at a clock or imagining a clock? And let's say you were looking at a clock and you see those hands moving, right? There's movement. A dog could look at that and see that there's movement. But does a dog think about time? We apply symbology to that movement, which is kind of hilarious. And then we believe it proves to us time. When all we're doing is we're using that to agree with other people on like a kind of synchronicity, perhaps, or on a meaning of a symbol or a set of symbols. But when you look right at that movement of hands and so forth, do you see time? What if it was just a different set of symbols and a different set of things pointing in different directions and you actually didn't even know what it was supposed to be about? Wouldn't it kind of look the same? Just looks like some movement, some shapes and forms and colors. So does that tell you what time is? That doesn't prove time. There's no time there, right? Time is up here. So these are just thought experiments or practical experiments. So what is your experience of time right now? If the thoughts are really persistent, if every time I ask that question, it's just like thought, then I would suggest asking the question and adding a little something to it. What is my experience of time right now without any thoughts? Including, you may have a thought that says, oh, there is no time. I already know this. All I experience is presence. But set that thought aside as well. Just set the thought aside that says, I know there's no time or something. And ask, what is my experience of time right now? What do you see? What are you experiencing? You don't need to have words for it. It's right in front of your face. And it's not solid. And it's not you. And it's not something in relation to you. And it's not an object. And it's not a thing. And it doesn't have form. And it's also not inherently formless. It's not a perception. And it's also not lacking perception. It's indeterminate when it comes to perception. It's indeterminate when it comes to distance. It's indeterminate when it comes to being. Does hearing me say that lead to thinking? Or does it lead to a kind of clearer experience? Start again if you want to. What is my experience of time right now? Without a past, without a future, without a memory, without imagining anything. You may ask yourself and see what happens. What is my experience of timelessness? Or you can just ask, what is timelessness? And in the same way, don't go to thoughts. Don't go to memories. Don't go to spiritual concepts or philosophies. Don't analyze. Just go directly to your experience. What is timelessness? What is untouched by time? What is free of the illusion of time? As I ask these questions, or as you penetrate this experience, just know you may start having almost like psychedelic experiences. Things may start to really shift perceptually. It may surprise you. But guess what? That's what's supposed to happen. It's totally normal. It doesn't have to happen, and it doesn't mean you're doing something right or wrong. I'm just saying it's common. And there's no need to comment on it. Sometimes the mind will grab a hold of you then and go, oh, this is cool. I can't wait to talk to so-and-so about it. I got to write this down. I got to get online and tell people about it. That's not fully authentic of the mind to tell you that. You do want to do that maybe, but what you're really trying to do is not go farther into it. Because if you just withhold from trying to comment, explain it to yourself, hold a mental model of it so you can use it later. If you set all those tendencies aside right now, it will deepen. The truth will clarify. What is your experience of time or timelessness right now? What is the experience of neither time nor timelessness right now? You may notice the senses change. The physical sense may feel not so physical. The colors and sounds and sensations may intermix or intermingle, but they don't have to. If any of this happens, just stay with the experience as primarily as you can, meaning don't back out of it to comment. What is your experience of timelessness now? Now, if you stay with this, either watch the video again or do this on your own, lead yourself back to this again and again, sooner or later you will hit these kind of strange emotion barriers, or something feels afraid, or may feel like you're falling, or you're going to fall off a cliff. If that happens, again, as I said before, just set aside the tendency to attempt to define what's happening, the tendency to attempt to describe, the tendency to try to hold on. You don't need to hold on here. You can let the experience take you. It's safe. And if it's intense fear for a few minutes, that's okay. You'll get through it. Stay with this primary entry that we opened up by asking, what is timelessness? Or what is time? Knowing now that they're both concepts, and knowing not to reach to thoughts or frameworks, because we don't need them here. You can let everything go, leave it behind, fully enter this mystery that isn't somewhere else. That's the beauty of this. This mystery is only here. It's the only journey that you don't have to go anywhere to go on. And it's the journey of all journeys. The journey into this right here, into nowness. We think we want to go on journeys, but we're actually avoiding this journey by going into the mind types of journey, the mental journeys. This is where the mental journeys end. And here you have to let go of all ideas, including the ideas of awakening. Like an event in the future called awakening. That's just as much an illusion as any other future idea. Because awakeness is here already. It's not somewhere else. You won't get to it. Because the sense of the one getting somewhere is itself an illusion. It's just another thought. So even awakeness loses its meaning here. But we don't need it. We don't need meanings here. We don't need descriptions. We don't need arriving. We don't need departing. This will reveal all obstructions, and there'll be something you feel usually. You're invited to not react. Just let that sensation fully be. Don't think. Don't analyze. Don't run from it. And the sensations or obstruction types of experiences will settle. And something remains anyway. Don't name it. But this most basic, maybe we could call it truth of reality, this living truth of reality, energy. Something remains, but not in form, not as a background, not as a basis of experience. It's in the sound, the bare sound, the raw sound, the awareness of the sound as the sound. It's in the sensations, just how they are, unaltered, not in time or space, too real to be in time or space, which are mental fabrications, and is right in front of your nose, at zero distance. It's that close. Lead yourself back here every chance you get. Don't tell yourself any more stories about time. Because whether you tell yourself a story about 1 minute or 1 hour or 1 day, it's just as binding as 30 years. One believed thought about time feels like a prison. Letting all those thoughts go right now That's eternity. And it is your birthright.